Okay, here we have an H-bridge circuit. The circuit has a motor in the center. It has two NPN transistors on the bottom, and we know that because we see that the diodes are facing out, not pointing in, and the emitters go to ground. So both the emitters go to ground. The collectors go to each side of the motor. It is the load. The bases, through a limit resistor, are connected together to the ones above on each side. Now, we look at these transistors, they are PNP, pointing in. We see that the diodes are pointing in, and the emitters go to positive because they are a PNP transistor. So they are wired backwards of the NPN. All right, the collectors go to the motor on each side. That would be the load for the system. Now, let's see how it works. If I make these positive over here, and I make this negative over here, then which transistors are on and which transistors are off? The NPN, when it's positive, is functional. It's on, okay? So it's flowing current. The PNP is not. It has to be pulled low to turn on. So this part of the circuit doesn't exist for now. Only this transistor. Here is the load, the motor. So current will flow from the ground through the transistor, through the motor, and up to the PNP. Now, we made the PNP over here negative, so the NPN is off, but the PNP is on, so the current can flow through this transistor and end up in the positive of the power supply. So now our motor turns one direction. If we take and make this positive and this negative, we now reverse the system. This transistor and this transistor are out of the system, and these two turn on. This one is positive, it's an NPN, so it turns on. Current flows from the ground of the power supply through the transistor, through the motor. Now this over here is now negative. This is a PNP transistor, so it turns on. So the current flows on through that and up through and into the positive side of the power supply. And at that point, the motor now runs in the opposite direction because the polarity has reversed across the motor. This is an H bridge, and it's used for reversing a motor that's running forward, and it's used to reverse and run it forward in a robot or some such device by just simply changing these 2 points. Now, if I add a 7404 between these 2 points, and I make this my input, since this is the input on the 7404, I can now just change this from plus to minus, 0 to 1, through the output of the 7404. The input will be inverted, so if I have a 1 here, 5 volts here, the output will be a 0 over there, 0 volts, and that's what I want. I want them to work opposite each other, and that allows me to just have an input of a 0 or a 1 or an on or an off. In this particular case, I'm not going to call it an on and off because it's turning the H bridge on and off, so what I'll call it is forward or reverse. Okay? So that will give me an H bridge controlled with one input, forward, reverse, using the 7404.